We have video of an incident that everyone is talking about. The Florida mom accused of dunking a 6-year-old child underwater at a resort pool. New body cam video of the scary moments shown in court. But the question is, are there two sides to this story? Here's the mom's husband testifying on her behalf.
Prior to that video, there was a child in the pool that was that repeatedly held my son under the water, dunked him.
That video per Wesh TV. The context that the family believes people should know about the scary moments that unfolded at that resort pool. We also have learned that that mom is a former police officer. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Well, this question is in a lot of ways an ultimate, what would you do if you're a parent? What would you do if a stranger held your child underwater, even for just a couple of seconds at a pool? Now that question is one that a lot of people are asking in the wake of this story, but it's also not the only question being raised about an alleged parenting meltdown that took place at a resort pool near Orlando. Now, here's the mom who is at the center of this story, 36-year-old Tiffany Griffith. Not only does it appear that she had a clean record before this, we've also learned she is a former member of law enforcement from the Fort Myers area. Now, this is video of Tiffany in court per WPEC TV in Florida. She got emotional at this most recent court appearance. This was after spending a couple of nights in jail because of what allegedly happened at this resort pool. And frankly, she almost spent Christmas behind bars. Not just because of what she was accused of doing at the pool in Osceola County, Florida, but perhaps because of the approach that her attorney took during her first court appearance. We'll talk more about that in just a moment, as well as the big update we have that came out of court in this case over the last couple of days. But first, let's just break down allegedly what happened. And you can decide for yourself by watching the newly released surveillance video that just came in about how everyone should have approached this situation. Okay, so let's go back to December 19th. We're talking the Friday before Christmas at the Gaylord Palms Resort in Kissimmee, Florida, Central Florida. I mean, this is supposed to be a time of year where everybody's just relaxing and having a good time. And what better place to go than a pool during some warm weather in Florida in the holiday season? Can't beat that, right? Things went sideways pretty quick, let's just say, because deputies say that there was a pool game that eventually turned violent amongst kids. They say that there was this 6-year-old child in the pool who ends up dunking a 7-year-old boy in the pool. Maybe it was just roughhousing, or at least started that way, as so many boys do, but the family of the woman now facing charges, they say it was actually more than that. They say it was bullying. Now, whatever it was, the mom of the boy that got dunked did not take too kindly to it, and that mom is Tiffany Griffith. Deputies say she got into the pool, then allegedly went after the boy that dunked her son. And what happens next is the stuff of every parent's panic. Authorities allege that Griffith placed her hands on the boy's shoulders and she forced him underwater and she held him there. Not just for 1 second, allegedly for between 2 and 4 seconds, which may not sound like a lot, but you think of that 6-year-old boy, this stranger putting her hands on you, holding you under even just for 1, 2, I mean, that can feel like a long period of time. No matter how long it was, incredibly scary. And if true, I think a lot of people are in agreement. You just don't put your hands on someone else's kids like that. Now, here is a chilling part to this story, because the detail that really changed a lot was when this boy fought his way up and he ran to his parents. He was sobbing and he was bleeding from his nose. Now, this is video that was recorded by an officer's body camera that shows them responding to the resort, and then they end up watching the surveillance video from the resort on an iPhone. And you can see it here per WPEC TV. This was shown in open court. Griffith allegedly gets into the pool, she splashes the kid with water, and then she goes at the boy and she pushes him under the water, then yells at the boy as she leaves. Deputies say that Griffith was a total stranger to that boy who had allegedly dunked her son, which apparently sparked all of this. Now, in the eyes of prosecutors, there is no way that a person should be putting their hands on a child like that. But could there be more to this story? So let's lay out what deputies say happened. A deputy writes that they were called to the Gaylord for a, quote, verbal disturbance. But the assistant security manager met them and said it was actually a possible drowning incident. The deputy first spoke with the little boy's mom. Now, according to the report, she stated her son, quote, exited the pool and approached her crying and bleeding from his nose. She said immediately after, an unknown woman, later identified as Tiffany Griffith, approached her and began yelling and even, quote, began recording her with her phone. That woman was then pulled away by a man with a child. The boy's dad was also there and gave a statement in Spanish. He said that he was sitting in a beach chair while the kids played in the 2-foot deep pool. He stated that his son, quote, returned from the pool crying with blood coming from his nose, and he said Griffith followed his son, yelling that she pushed him because he had pushed her child. Now, he told deputies another guest approached him and said they, quote, witnessed the same female attempt to drown his son. And that's where a key independent witness comes in when we're talking about this story. Now, another guest told deputies that he saw a, quote, observed the female move behind one of the male children and place both of her hands on the child's shoulders. The female fully submerged the child underwater for approximately 2 to 4 seconds. Now, after that, he says she splashed the boy again, then followed him as he ran to his family and started yelling. But this investigation did not stop with the witness statements. Hotel security identified the room that Griffith was staying in. Then deputies reviewed that security footage. We showed you part of it. And the report states that the video from around 4:22 in the afternoon shows the kids playing and splashing. Then it shows Tiffany Griffith in a black bathing suit enter the pool, approach the kids, and splash them. Then it captures the critical moment. She approaches the boy, quote, from behind and placing both hands on his shoulders. Then, quote, Tiffany then forcefully submerged him underwater for approximately 2 seconds. Now, that video evidence, paired with the witness statements and the photo of the bloodied towels from the boy's nosebleeds submitted by his mom, formed the basis for the arrest and subsequent charge of aggravated child abuse. Now, there has been a lot of debate online under the sheriff's announcement of this arrest because some commenters are asking why the 6-year-old who dunked her child was not taken into custody, with one person saying, quote, is the juvenile that dunked her child in custody, with one person responding, no. He cried to his mom when someone else taught him a lesson his parents should have taught him, end quote. Then you have another person appears to respond, why would a 6-year-old be taken into custody? Children make mistakes. An adult should not put their hands on someone else's child. Griffith was arrested and then she was charged with that felony, aggravated child abuse. And it does appear in her first court appearance, a judge threw the book at her. This is Griffith's first court appearance. Her attorney tried to, it appears, minimize the injury that the boy had, that bloody nose, after being allegedly dunked by Tiffany Griffith. So here is what the attorney said, but boy, listen to how the judge responded.
The allegation is the child was running to his parents with a nosebleed.
Griffith's attorney defending his client, arguing if her actions could have caused an alleged nosebleed.
It was when the child had approached the parents that there were injuries. There's no mention of any action that was taken in between that time that would have led to those injuries.
So you don't think that the placing both hands on his shoulders, forcibly submerging him underwater and holding him underwater is sufficient?
I believe it was if that was, I would just argue again, Your Honor, as to what I said. I think that I would withdraw my argument, I guess.
The judge held Griffith without bond. Some people have commented on that being a bit of an overreaction. I mean, you think being held without bond, there are some incredibly serious crimes like murder, where people are at least granted bond. But clearly in this case, the judge was not happy with the approach that Griffith's side took.
While you're in jail, you can have no contact with the victim or the victim's family. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Griffith ended up spending another night in jail. Then the next day, she faced a different judge again for a bond hearing.
A parent should certainly know not to put their hands on someone else's child. And certainly any former law enforcement should know not to put their hands on someone else's child.
And in this hearing, the video of the alleged incident was shown in open court, and you can allegedly see Griffith getting into the water, then going at the young boy. Griffith's history as a law enforcement officer was a new development in this case. Here's a post that was found by WPBF TV. This is from the Punta Gorda Police Department in Florida in 2016, recognizing a school resource officer with the last name of Viola. And certainly that officer looks a lot like Griffith. Maybe it's a maiden name, but she was recognized as employee of the quarter. Now, that police department would not confirm to the TV station specifically if this was the woman arrested for what happened at the resort. Again, it looks a lot like her. They did say that an Officer Viola did work at their department from 2013 to 2018. So Griffith has not just a little bit of a history as a law enforcement officer, but she was a school resource officer, interacted with children every single day, and she did that job for 5 years. This wasn't just a couple of months. I typed Tiffany Griffith's name into truthfinder.com, and two important pieces of information came up in putting this story together. One is that she doesn't have a criminal history. She has a speeding ticket, it appears in there, but other than that, this appears to be the first time that she has ever been in serious trouble with the law. And the other part of it is that the maiden name that comes up matches the name of the school resource officer out of Punta Gorda, Florida, with the last name of Viola, who was once employee of the quarter with the Punta Gorda Police Department, and that matches up with the history showing that Tiffany Griffith, as said in court, is a former member of law enforcement. Now, we use TruthFinder to learn more about her in putting this story together. It is a powerful public records search service that we use to do research here at Law&Crime. You plug in a name and you can get address information, criminal history, and more. And even if you don't work in true crime, it can give you some peace of mind because TruthFinder is one of the largest public records search services in the US. And with a paid subscription, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone, and that includes looking up registered sex offenders in your area as well, which can be incredibly useful. Stay informed, stay safe, check public records with TruthFinder now at truthfinder.com/OTC. Now let's get back to the incident in question. One of the responding deputies ended up testifying at this bond hearing. Here is what they said in court about what Griffith did in the pool.
And placed both of her hands on his shoulders and submerged them in the water for a couple of seconds. He wasn't sure. He advised it was approximately 2 to 4 seconds, and then let go of him, proceeded to splash water before exiting the pool.
But again, could there be more to this story? Griffith's side is arguing that there is some important context, at least, to what happened that people should hear, and you can decide if that changes the way that you view this story. The defense argues 6-year-old boy was bullying Griffith's son, who is autistic and nonverbal. This is per WESH TV. So this is a child who has some special needs. Here's Griffith's husband on the stand testifying during the hearing.
There was a child in the pool that was that repeatedly held my son under the water, dunked him. Tiffany and I basically looked at each other and asked where this kid's parents were, why they weren't watching him.
Tiffany's defense attorney also said it was extreme to hold her without bond, which again is often something you see in cases with far more serious charges like murder. Certainly aggravated child abuse is a serious charge, and you have a child who is allegedly injured, but again, being held without bond. This hearing, though, had a different outcome than the first one, because after this hearing, Griffith appears to have been given at least some grace by the court. She was granted a bond of $20,000, and she was able to post that, so she is no longer in jail. She did not comment to the TV stations that were waiting for her outside the jail when she and her husband walked out. Here are the conditions of her release per court documents we found online. She cannot have contact with the victim. She cannot have contact with the victim's parents or any witnesses to what allegedly happened, and she can't go back to the Gaylord Palms Resort where all of this went down. On top of that, she's not allowed to consume alcohol, and it's unclear to this point what role law enforcement believe alcohol played in what happened. Now, this is the kind of story, it lights up the comments section as we just showed you there, and there's a lot of debate online about whether this was an overreaction or whether she deserves to face the serious charges that she does because she allegedly dunked a 6-year-old child underwater, a child that she didn't know and a child that was not her own. She does not have any future court dates listed, but we'll be keeping a close eye on this story. Joining us now once again to talk about this case and what could come next is retired NYPD Detective David Sarney. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. The first time we talked about this case, we hadn't seen the video yet of Tiffany Griffith and what allegedly took place here at this resort. Now that we've seen the video, what do you make of it?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And here's a lot of things about this, and you have to look at what's reasonable, and that's a key word in the criminal justice system, what's reasonable. If she's claiming the fact she's defending her child in defense of the others, what would be considered reasonable? Her actions based on that video, if she's saying she's doing it in the defense of her child, self-defense or defense of others, it's limited because you see her actually splash and then grab the kid and dunk the kid, and it's a very short pool. So maybe there's a reason why he got a bloody nose. I remember at the original arraignment, they wondered why he got a bloody nose. There's a chance he could have struck his face to the bottom of the pool. We don't know. We can't see that far of it. But were her actions reasonable? And if the police are there to do this, and based on the information they're getting from the victim's family, and they are a victim whether you like the kid or not, they're saying what happened to them and what happened to the kid and showing an injury, it wasn't reasonable to do that to that child. And it doesn't seem to be, especially if you're law enforcement. You should understand what's considered reasonable. If you're defending your child at the moment, you might be able to defend your actions. But this was not in defense of your child. This seemed to be an after event of what happened to your child. So there's the problem there. And this is why you have the arrest that it is. And it's a felony, whether you like it or not. Her actions constituted in Florida law is a felony.
And I think too, I mean, the bloody nose part of it, and we don't know specifically how the child got a bloody nose, whether it was from the drowning, but it was like a 2-foot pool. So it's like, imagine, yes, maybe for those that are kind of taking her side in this from the comments section, she dunked the kid for, it was only 1 or 2 seconds. Like, I mean, if you took someone's head and smashed it against a concrete floor, then that's definitely something. It doesn't matter how many seconds it was. And if that's how the kid got his bloody nose, that's certainly not a good look at all. So the first bond hearing did not go well, especially with her defense attorney. Second bond hearing, she's able to, or the first court appearance, second one was the bond hearing. The fact it's only $20,000 bond, she's able to post that. What does that tell you about the severity of this case going forward?
It's still severe, and the $20,000 bond is to make sure that she appears in court. That's the reason why you do bails and bonds and the like. So they just want to make sure she appears in court. And I don't think she would have a reason not to. I think it's her first arrest. Apparently she's involved in law enforcement, which is another problem all to itself. But that's going to be a problem with her job. But it's still severe because of the age of the child. It's not between a 20-year-old and a 25-year-old, a 37-year-old and a 37-year-old. It is a 37-year-old adult female with a child 6 years old. Whether her anger was there in her defense of her child, she wants to play the defense of her child, is fine. It doesn't matter. It's based on the law itself. And I know her attorney brought up the fact that it should just be a battery. But again, it comes back to the age of the child. And not only that, you also, the child isn't pressing charges. It's the victim's family that's pressing the charges because a 6-year-old can't do it. So they're going to do what they need to do. They're pursuing this, and it's going to be obviously a civil suit at the next level, obviously, or at least a sub part of this whole case. But they're doing what they're going to do. The police arrest the person based on the totality of circumstances, based on the crime itself. The prosecutor decides whether or not to continue the case. The original arraignment had her at the highest level of aggravated child abuse. They've lowered that. That's one positive on her side. Whether or not it will be, tried out in court or will be pled out depends upon the whole criminal justice system. She's innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. I continue to say that because there are enough things to make someone get arrested, which is probable cause, but to get to that beyond a reasonable doubt, we'll see. And that's what it comes down to. Will they take this to trial? It's a financial burden if you do, because you have to pay for your attorney to do that. They may plea it out. But the severity of the case is still there based on the age of the victim. And the victim is 6 years old, whether you like it or not. It's a 6-year-old child. And does a 37-year-old female have the right to put hands on a child that isn't theirs? And this is the argument that we people are back and forth about.
Right. And I also think, too, the old saying is there's always two sides to every story, but it's like you watch the surveillance video and she puts her hands on a 6-year-old kid, and it's not like defending her child and pulling her child away from a kid that might have been attacking her. It's just putting your hands on a kid, slamming him down, and then he comes back with a bloody nose. It's not a good look. With that said, some might say you're adding context. Her child is special needs. He's apparently on the autism spectrum, may have been nonverbal. Does any of that play into her side of it at all? That, like, clearly this is a mom who's defensive of her kid, who may have been getting, in their words, bullied by, and her kid is someone who has challenges.
That could be part of the defense, but the thing is, with the law itself, it doesn't talk about that. And that's the one thing. The law is about the injury to the child that she caused injury to, and the abuse, in the sense what she did. You could be angry, you could be heated, you could be ticked off. The husband was there. The child's father was there. So what happened between that moment? How did they know? Apparently the child went to them and told them this. So I'm not sure if this is all coming to play, or did they observe it? But they had a moment of clarity based on what the father said, or husband said, is they talked about asking where the kid's parents were. And if you're going to talk about intent, was this reckless? Was this intentional? Was this, what was the reason behind it? At the moment, you could probably claim self-defense, defending your child. If the child's being splashed, you grab the child, pull the child away. But this is where this will be mitigated at court, and that's why the prosecutor is really pursuing this severely. I mean, it's still keeping a child abuse. They haven't reduced it that severely. They didn't say, okay, we'll accept this. They're keeping the charge right now. So they're going to still weigh out all the information. They have the victim's information, interviews from witnesses, the video itself. That video is not very good. And, video is not absolutes, but seeing the actions of the mother then and there on that child, or, if you're a parent, if you're that, and you have to put it the other side, if you're the child, if you're the victim, if you're the child who's being dunked like that, or put down or submerged into water, how would you feel on that side of it? And there's where it comes down to. The law has to be unbiased. We're not concerned about, unfortunately, the mental capacity at this point of the parents, about the perpetrator's child. They're worried about the incident itself that took place. And how this will be litigated in court will maybe take some time, or maybe pled out. But the law is a law at this point. Whether you like it or not, that's what the law states.
And the other part, too, so she has a history of being in law enforcement. She apparently left law enforcement at least 2018 seems like the last time she was, and then she might have gotten into real estate or something like that. But the fact that she has a history of being a police officer, and on one hand, especially if she was a school resource officer, you're like, you should know the rules when it comes to putting your hands on another child. At the same time, this is someone who's had a steady job. We see defense attorneys often make that argument. How does a history of law enforcement factor in? Does this really hurt her, or is it something where the judge could look and say, okay, this is a person who just made a mistake?
Unfortunately, it can hurt her, because if prior law enforcement experience means you've been trained in the procedures. Not only that, an SRO, school resource officer, gets extra training to deal with children. So this could weigh badly on her end. But the reality is, this will be something you have to look at. And I'm not really sure. Again, the word discretion is a big thing. Discretion is a major aspect to all of this. Discretion of the actions of the mother, discretion of the police officers on scene, discretion of the prosecutor, discretion of the judge. That's how the laws work. She should have better knowledge. She knows better. That's going to be something that may weigh heavily on that she, even though she's no longer law enforcement, she was trained not to do things the proper way, and knowing the law. Even if you're not active in law enforcement, I'm retired a few years, but I do know the law, and if I don't, I research a little bit. But when you deal with kids, you should know better that your kids have to be taken or treated differently when it comes to the law, and when it comes to actions against children. Could that, when you're dealing with this is why the cops on scene didn't just try to mitigate this, because you have an angry parent, an angry victim's parent there, and you have people on the other side, a defendant or a perpetrator, a suspect who committed a crime, and that's what you have to weigh it against. So will it affect her? That's up to the attorneys. They're up to her defense attorney how to handle this. He's trying to, limit the amount of the charge, to lower the charge to just a simple assault or a simple battery. But the age is a big thing, so that'll be up to the prosecutor whether or not they decide that they want to just mitigate this or litigate it to the point of, okay, we'll keep it a simple assault. But we'll see. That's what it comes down to. We'll see on that end. But right now, it doesn't look good. It's just bad eye. It's a bad optics for this woman.
There was a deputy who responded, who testified at the bond hearing as well. And what stood out to me was that you have security at this resort that told law enforcement that this was a possible drowning. I also think that this had to be a very chaotic scene. Parents upset on both sides. Alcohol was apparently involved. You have Tiffany Griffith, allegedly she's trying to record the other family, which that's never a good look for anybody when someone gets into their face with a camera. How does all of those circumstances, if you're responding to something like this, impact the way that maybe a police officer views what had happened, especially if you have security on the front end saying this is a possible drowning that took place?
Yeah, that's another part of it when you talk about that, and that's why when you hear this, and security, I always tell people, are the eyes and ears of the first responders. They were there first. So you're getting that information, a possible drowning, and you can think in law enforcement, what happened? Oh my goodness, how bad could this be? Given the circumstances, were there more officers that showed up at the scene to kind of quell the scenario, this whole thing that's going on? I'm not sure. We don't see anything about that with the video or anything about that part of it. But as when you're hearing that, you're like, this is a severe case, and you're like, let's get the story. You may have one part of the story, but you want to get everyone's story. And this is why law enforcement gets, we're never, one thing I just listened to was funny. It's like, not everyone's going to like you, how you respond to these things. I guarantee you that Tiffany thought she was right. The victim's parent thought they were right. But what you're doing is you're weighing all the totality of circumstances, which is information from the ear and eye witnesses. Because when you have people in angry situations, in emotional situations, you're not going to get the real answer. So you actually really depend upon the outside point of view, the security guards, anyone at the pool that saw it that want to tell you what they saw. And not only that, once the next thing you'll ask is there video? And the best part is they got the video footage, and that shows exactly what happened. So it's not just he said, she said, and they said. That they said, or the witnesses are very important, but now you also have video to support what the witnesses said that may refute either what the victim's family said or what the now perpetrator defendants said at the time.
And we don't know how Tiffany Griffith approached law enforcement when they were questioning her about what happened. And again, I think anytime you see those videos of someone coming up to somebody with a camera in their face, it's just not a good look. Knowing that, to what her side is saying, what her husband was saying, that this 6-year-old was bullying their kid has special needs, that they were looking for the kid's parents, they couldn't find them, like all of those things that kind of surround the key moment here, which is a 36-year-old woman putting her hands on a 6-year-old that's not her child. She was a stranger to this boy. When it comes to this case and how law enforcement handled it, does really any of that other stuff matter other than the fact that you have a grown woman putting her hands on a kid that's not her own?
Not particularly on the moment in time in the arrest. That's part of the arrest. That's part of the whole process to gather all the information available to you. The chaotic scene you'll deal with. You get that quelled down. You get the information you need. You find out. Listen, I think this woman's going to get arrested. You arrest her. Again, husband is there the whole time, and this is what it comes down to. And this is the prosecutor's aspect to it. You're going to bring this all to the prosecutor's office, the ADA or whoever, prosecutor at this point, finding out what they're telling you. And they're going to weigh in the factors that you have to determine whether or not, what kind of charge we're going to have. And that's why it does matter, but once that is quelled, you get your information, you take that information, forward it to the prosecutor's office. Well, then they will determine whether or not, after that conferral, where they're not going to upgrade the charges, keep the charges as they are, or decline to prosecute. But based on, I guarantee you, what the officer told them at that conferral, plus the evidence they had available, that's why they kept the charge. Because the video, if you're going to say it's a defense of a child instantaneously, yes, that's a possibility. But it did not seem as an instantaneous action, because the husband said that they talked about it and discussed it very briefly as to where's this child's parents. So I don't know the time between that or anywhere else.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens next. Certainly just a mess. Fortunately, the boy that she allegedly went after, that he didn't have serious injuries, that her son's okay, but man, what a mess. Retired NYPD Detective David Sarney, thanks for talking with us about this story. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and stay safe.
Again, it's unclear when Tiffany Griffith will be back in court in this case. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.